Yeah.
So my next question to you, which I don't know about our listeners or how things are in Toronto, but I find here in Montreal, there are black movies and then there are everything else, right? And so my question is, what are your thoughts on movies that feature predominantly black cast being labeled as black movies when the majority of movies that feature white cast are not labeled as white movies or just movies? And here in Montreal, those quote unquote black movies are hard to find in theaters. They're in select theaters for a select amount of time
Right.
as opposed to every other movie,
I
which
think
are
it's
not
the
considered
the
white movies.
perception or the thought process that black movies are not going to be successful.
Mhm.
Unless you're Tyler Perry, because Tyler Perry has sold out
Mhm.
lots of black shows and movies. And I don't care what anybody says. Y'all could come for me. I love Medea. A
Yeah,
lot of black women
I do.
hate Medea. A
So
lot of
funny.
black, especially a lot of black men, they hate Medea. The thought of a black man dressing as a woman,
Well, that's their
portraying,
issue. That's on
they
them. I'm not.
can't stand it. And a lot of black men don't like the idea of black men dressing up as black women. They're just like, just
Whatever.
hire a black woman to do it. But I think the whole mindset is that black movies will not be as successful as every other movies that are generally directed or written by a white cast, right? So, for example, Tyler Perry movies were nowhere to be found in Montreal. You have to go to Ottawa or Toronto because I remember there was a couple Medea movies that came out, and what? No, Medea's funeral was not in any movie theater in Montreal. But you come to Toronto because Toronto is more
Yeah.
heavily there's a bigger black population in Toronto compared to Montreal. Maybe it's growing now, but
Mhm.
when I was younger, Toronto was where it's at when it came to a black population. It still is.
Mhm.
Um, if you wanted to see these black movies, are either trying to bootleg it or you're going to Toronto to watch the movie.
Or you going to that one theater in
Right.
Saint Laurent that
Right.
showed? I don't know if you knew that. I think it was Guzzo. There's a Guzzo theater near the Place Vertu Mall. That
Yes.
was like the one place I would always go there if I wanted to see Tyler Perry movies or any other quote unquote black movies because they weren't being shown
No.
anywhere
Where
else.
else?
And I think because in that neighborhood there were more black people, so they
Right.
felt comfortable having it there. But I agree with you
I
100%.
think it just depends on the area that you're brought up with, right? If you're in a predominantly black area, for sure they're going to be showing more black movies. If you're in a mixed area, yeah, they'll probably risk, but they'll probably bet or put money on the ones that they feel as though would be a popular movie that people will want to buy and watch. And then if you're in a predominantly white area, you ain't seen any of that because
Yeah.
their mindset is, well, who's gonna want to see this?
Yeah,
If I live in a
exactly.
completely white town, who's gonna want to see this?
See, but that's wrong because it's like when when a movie is featuring a predominantly black cast, it becomes a black movie, right? But
Right.
all other movies that have predominantly white cast, which is the majority of movies, they're not seen as white movies.
No, they're just
Black
called
people are going
movies.
to see them. Yeah, Latino people are going to see them. Chinese people, Japanese, like everybody's going to see them, and that's okay. So why is it okay for minorities to go see a white cast and relate? As far as Hollywood's concerned, they're supposed to relate to that, but white people can't relate to the quote unquote black movies. That never made sense and doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know why it would be like that. I would think that, I mean, every movie has a message in it or something that you can relate to.
Right.
I mean, like if it's Medea's family reunion, I don't know if you could relate to Medea because Medea,
Yeah, she's a little extra. She's a little extra.
she's a whole lot of woman. What can I
Yeah.
say? But like, I feel like other movies, there usually is a message behind it that I
Yeah.
feel like you should be able to relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for example, maybe not in the specific environment, but the movie Precious
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily have to be the slums or a ghetto,
Right.
but maybe you could relate with the fact that she was being abused by her mother,
Exactly.
that kind of
Exactly.
relation. Like there
Exactly.
are those type of movies where, oh, I could relate to that because my mom is also very abusive, or my mom is a drunk, or
Right.
like some sort of relation to that end.
Yeah, you're being represented in some way.
Yeah, there's something that you can connect with.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. You're right about that. But talking about representation, do you remember growing up feeling that you were represented in the books that you read, shows
No.
that you watched,
No.
toys that you played with? No?
Mm. When it comes to books and TV shows, growing up, the only black okay, so let's start with TV shows.
Hmm.
I was very much into superhero stuff
Hmm.
growing up. So Spider-Man,
Hmm.
X-Men, I was very into that.
Learn
And
something new every day. Wouldn't have thought that, Michelle.
oh yeah, I was very much into the listen, my dad taped TMNT. Am I saying that right now? Teenage
The
Mutant
teenage mutant ninja turtles.
Yes, I was very much into
Yeah, me
TMNT,
too. Me too.
right? So the whole superhero thing. Obviously, I'm never gonna relate to a turtle, okay? A turtle's green. So there's no representation on a turtle then. But for me growing up, I think the only closest one I had was Storm from X-Men. And I
Mm.
remember going, "Yeah, I'm Storm." And I thought it was so
Mhm.
cool, like I can control the weather.
Mhm, mhm.
Like whenever I would be playing superheroes, I would always be Storm, but Storm was the only character that I had
Right,
in terms of cartoon representation of a black person. Now, it was a little bit of a stretch because Storm is black with white hair.
right,
I don't know. Is that
right,
possible? I'm not too
right,
sure.
right.
But I mean, it was something that we could still relate to. Now in terms of books, I'm gonna be frank with you. No book I have ever read had any sort of black
Right,
character,
right.
whether it was a children book where you see pictures
Mhm.
or in a novel that I read.
Really?
None of them.
Oh.
To I just like I'm literally trying to think quickly. Um But growing up, I didn't have the books like we have now.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
can literally pull out books. We have so many, my daughter has so many books about black characters, whether they're talking about their hair and how beautiful they are
right,
to um um, I just didn't have that. I didn't have any of that. And now did it impact me? I can't say that it did, but I can't say that it didn't,
right.
right? My memory doesn't serve me that well.
The mom brain.
Yeah, mom, listen, when you have 1 kid, fine. 2 kids, just mash up your brain.
Don't tell me that. Screw up at 1, okay? Wait to
S
2.
But I do feel like it could impact kids if they're not around the environment of seeing representation in them.
Right,
Because like you had mentioned earlier, their mindset might be, "Oh, well, I can't do that because only
right.
white people could do that."
Yeah,
Or I
yeah.
can only do for example, there's a lot of like representation about or maybe it's I don't know if it's representation really, but people have this perception that Asian people are good at math.
Right.
So whenever there's an Asian person in a movie, let me just tell you, they're good at math. They're just
Yeah,
smart, right?
yeah,
So now what that does is, well, I can't be smart, right? Only Asian people can be smart.
yeah,
Right? So I do see how it can affect
yeah.
a little black boy or a little black girl. And I'm sure maybe to some degrees it did affect me. Um, but if we had more representation, I think it would help these kids have well, I mean, I see it now, but if there was more representation when we were growing up, I think
Mhm.
there would be a lot of kids that would feel like they can do this and they're
Right,
not limited to being a rapper
right, right, yeah. They didn't have their limitations set for them based on what they saw.
or a basketball player. Yeah, exactly.